Hi, this is Chris from Orange Coast College's Art Department, reviewing how to render complex primitives in a rough wood texture using colored pencil and marker on Canson paper. So what I want to do is draw out 4 complex primitives, and I'm just going to use this handout from the Rapid Viz book and draw 4 of them out here. And then once I do that, I want to apply marker and colored pencil. So I've already got 3 forms rendered, and I'm going to do a 4th one here. And let's see. How about this guy? That looks all right. So let me leave that out where you can see it. And I'm going to just do what we've done before in class. I'm going to set up my basic cube lightly in pencil and then draw in what we need. So I notice that we've got kind of a third or quarter platform going on here. And it goes about most of the way, but not all the way across. And then we've kind of got this arched form coming up about midway and then turning into a semicircle. And then in it, I've got buried another circle. So if I match this guy, something like that. Bring that guy through. Oh, it would be nice if I could see through the circle if I make it just big enough. And then I connect. All right, so that's my 4th form here. But before I get started, I kind of want to I want to review where we're going to use values. And taking some of Will Weston's notes, I'm going to make a little value chart starting with a white box for our highlight, paper for our lit surface, and then a few shades of gray for our shaded surface. So I'm going to start our first color here, kind of the lightest part of our shaded surface at 40%. Then I want to have a 60, and then an 80. And then separately, sometimes we don't get direct light on our surfaces facing the light source. So I'm going to use a 20 just to indicate a surface that doesn't receive light perpendicularly. And then lastly, I'm going to add, mostly for shadow's sake, a cast shadow area for our ground plane surface at 90. So this is 40, 60, 80, 90. And here we've got a 20. And you'll see that'll dry up a lot. So the first thing I want to do is shade the parts of my forms that are not receiving light. And let's go ahead and just figure a steeper than 45-degree light angle coming from the right. And we'll run the shadows out horizontally. So that'll be my light angle. So my top surfaces will be the surfaces that are the paper, and then my verticals that are still receiving light will get the 20%. So let's start with that. I'm going to go with my 20%. So this is receiving light, but it's not quite receiving it perpendicular. Same for this section. So all these vertical planes that are facing the right side of my paper, I'm going to give the 20%. This one doesn't have one. This one has one. And it goes up, but it starts to transition right about there. So I'm going to give it one shot with my 10% to kind of transition, and then it'll just be taking direct light. And I'll probably put a highlight in there in time. So you can see this is starting to dry up already. And the areas where we're not receiving light, I'm going to get in there with that 40. And so because this is a curve, I'll hit one shot with a 30 to give myself a little transition. And then let's give it maybe, bring it around a little. Here we've got a little curve, so I'm going to give it a little 60 as it rounds the corner and really starts facing away from the light. This one's going to be tricky. So as we're parallel with that guy, we'll have some 40. And I might even bring some 60 into that corner, but it's curved, so I want to transition here with a little 30. And then maybe just a little bit of 10. And then let's get in with our 60 here. Give that a transition with 50. All right, and now back to our 40 for just our surfaces that are facing away. And then inside here, we're definitely going to have some dark, and it's going to come around to the light. I'll put the 40 in first, and I'll just try to indicate where the 40 is going to go, and then I'll give it a little transition. So some 20. Transition up to the 60 here. And I've noticed that I can probably give that a little 10%, help with the curve. So I've got my shaded sides. Next up, let's go ahead and drop in some shadows, cast shadows. I'm going to line them out first, and then I'm going to fill them with 90, and we can probably just time-lapse this. Now, I put 90 on the ground plane cast shadow, but I'm going to switch over to 80 for the cast shadow that is on the surface of the block. All right, so I've got my roughed in forms, I've got some shading on them, but next really what we want to do is apply that rough wood texture. So before I get into my lines here, I want to talk to you a little bit about complex versus simple balance. So if we look at it, let's say a board, sort of a rough board, I want to have a bit of grain in there, but I want sort of the amount of complexity, meaning these irregular lines and notches and scars and marks, to be 1/3 complex and 2/3 simple. And I might also, you know, given that lighting scenario that we talked about using, I can put a little highlight, add a little bit, oops, kind of blending there. I really don't want to blend my black and my white colored pencils. I want them to be distinct. But I don't want to overload the form with a bunch of busyness. I want my complexity to be about 1/3 and leave areas for the eye to rest, and the simple shapes to be about 2/3. So I'm going to sharpen my black pencil and go ahead and lay in the wood texture. Okay, here we've got the first one done with some black colored pencil line, and I'm trying to keep that 1/3, 2/3 complex to simple balance, and I feel like I'm getting it. I've got some areas for the eye to rest, and then I've got some areas of visual interest. Now let's come through and show some highlights. So here I'm trying to find the surfaces that if light's coming in steep from about 1 o'clock, 1:30 on the dial, I'm finding where it's going to find surfaces perpendicular to that. All right, so I think we've got what we're looking for going on. Want to get back, I think, and get a little bit of some, we have a combination. We've got the opportunity to do a little shading with our pencil here. Or we can also bring in a little bit of marker. Normally you want marker first. I probably should have just thrown a little bit of 60 marker in before that black, but let's see here. See how that looks once it dries up. And we can also take some of our black and get a little occlusion shadow going on. Make our shadow a little bit darker as we're closer to our object. And kind of get in there and just fine tune a little bit. Add a little subtlety. Don't want to lose that edge over there. In my edge facing the light, I can get a little bit of white line in. So this is probably a little beat up. And you just kind of want to find the level that's working for you. And I could noodle with this all day long. So sometimes you just got to pull yourself away. All right, so there's one. I'm a little going back and forth on this leading edge of how much I want to thicken it up. Kind of want to, have a thick silhouette line like we normally do. So I think I'm going to go back and make sure that my black is reading there. Okay, now I'm going to move on and we'll take a look at the rest of these guys. And now a pass with the highlights. All right, so I think I've gone through and I've given the passes. So I've got sort of my sketch pass, I've got my marker pass for shading and shadow, then I've got my colored pencil line work pass where I'm giving character to the lines, both black and white, trying to stay consistent with my light coming in from about 1 o'clock on the clock dial. And then going around and just fine-tuning, adding bits and bobs to try to get a little more character, a little highlight and shadow. I can probably use a few, nail holes, little scratches. Again, we could kind of do this forever, but you don't want to do it too much. And note how I'm trying to use the perspective. I'm not putting it, just dots. I'm trying to emphasize the grain or emphasize the perspective and kind of do more dashes. So now it's your turn. Go ahead and find some forms that are not pure primitives. They've got a little bit of complexity, a little bit of something for you to dig in on. As I look at this, I'm thinking, gosh, should I be getting my 60 in there? And let's take a quick look. I feel like maybe we could come on through. And I'm being a little casual with it and leaving some gaps. And I think that might give us a little bit. Oh, let's do it up here too. And you'll see as it dries. I think it'll help out a little bit with having our forms read. All right, now it's your turn. Have some fun. This should be a nice, relaxing groove once you've got the feel for it. Good luck.